Hello. Hi. So this is my Gamecube, one of my Gamecubes, and I'm gonna region mod it, kind of region mod. It's not really much of a mod. It's just switching NTSC JP to NTSC USA. So basically there's a couple of positions you just need to put a simple switch across. So the switches I'm using are these switches. Where the hell is the camera? There we go. These are double pole, double throw switches. It's a double pole and double throw, so they can do a couple of things simultaneously. They can switch two or three things, I think. Two things simultaneously. So what I'm switching is the region, and I was planning on switching an LED so it changes with the power button, but the LEDs never turned up from China, so never mind. So basically, these are the chips, the main chips, the CPUs, ATI, NEC, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know the specs, to be honest, but there's a little chip. Oh, I've got a magnetic screwdriver. Probably not a good idea to poke around with that. So I'll just use my magnetic flux thing. So there's a point here. Now there's a middle chip. It's called the R6 anyway. R6 chip, the rear terminal. Looking at it from this viewpoint, so it's basically there. That rear terminal there. This is it says R6 here. The rear terminal from where it says R6. You need to put a little bit of cable. So a little bit of this cable from there to a couple of positions on this switch. One of the middle ones and one of the end ones. Either middle one, but then one of the corresponding end ones. So if you choose that middle one, you need to put it on that end one or that end one, so in the row, so it switches. Anyway, so what I'm gonna do is do the first solder point. Now you have to be very careful because this is a really tiny chip and a tiny solder point as well, so it's kind of tricky. I've done it a few times now with the Gamecube that this phone's actually sitting on. It just meant that I could play a few games in English, because I've got loads of Japanese games, and I really wanted to play the Wind Waker in English, so I ended up buying it for a good price, actually, off eBay. So I got it for about $30 delivered, which is pretty reasonable to Japan. So I was pretty pleased. So I've stripped the end of this wire, and I'm just going to solder it, put a little bit of solder on the end of it, tiny bit of solder. Might even be a better idea to put a little bit of solder on the terminal. I hate this soldering iron. It's fucking cheap as dog's shit. Okay, so all I need to do is just put a tiny bit of solder Right, it didn't work too well. Oh, for fuck's sake. Right. I hate doing this. Fucking hate it. Right, that's pretty solid. Such a fine joint to do. Just give it a little tug, and that's stuck on pretty nicely. So I need to cut the cable so it can come out the rear vent. So basically, I'll mount the switch on this rear vent. I'm going to zoom out for a sec. This is annoying me. Okay, so the rear vent is here. I need the switch to come out of the fourth from the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. That fourth vent there. So I'll cut the switch down, and I need to blade the switch a little bit to get it thin enough to go through. Only a little bit. It's a tiny bit actually. It's not too much. But what I do with these switches, I cut the metal tabs off each end. So you see the tabs? I cut them off with a pair of side cutters. I try to anyway. There we go, that's one side done. Oh, I need to go to the gym. Christ, right, that's done. Okay, so now it's a shorter switch. So it doesn't go in like that now because it's too wide, the actual, that thing there, the switch itself. So I get a Stanley knife. Where's I hate doing this. I always get so stressed out doing bollocks like this. So I just basically just blade down the switch and shave off a bit. That's all you need to do. I don't need to show you how to do it. I'm sure you can do it. Actually, that solder bit, that's the most difficult part really. The next solder joint, I'll show you where it goes in a sec. I'm just going to shave this switch down. It won't take a sec actually. Make sure your Stanley blade's sharp, because otherwise you're just going to have a bloody nightmare. It's not worth it, believe me. Right, that took, in real time, that took a very short while indeed. And that's done, that switch is done. So now you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it provisionally, just coming through, poking through like that. Now I glue it. Some people don't glue it, some people don't bother, but I glue it personally because it doesn't bother me. People go, oh no, you're going to damage something. But I mean, to be honest, you can scrape the glue off if you really want to turn back the hands of time and take the switch away for whatever reason. For me, I can give a toss. It's just a Gamecube and it's inside, you can't see it. I'm not actually drilling a hole in the side of the Gamecube like some people do. This is the non-invasive method. Let's shave a little bit of this back off. Alright. Let's see how that goes. Yep, that's much better. Right, just need to get some super glue now. So I'm just going to. This is the switch, and it's been mounted there on the outside. There's a little. I spilled a little bit of glue on the outside, but I'll clean that up. So yeah, fourth vent from the right. and there you go. Just gonna wait for that to dry a bit and then move on to doing the next terminal. So I'm just gonna zoom back in. Okay, so next to the R6 chip there's this little capacitor. Now that capacitor, the front terminal, the terminal facing us, you can actually see, you can see a glob of flux there, so you can just reheat that, but I tend to put a little bit of extra on just in case I take some off while I'm reheating. But so I'll put a little bit of extra flux on before solder. I strip the end a tiny bit. Okay, now that should be as tight as a mouse's ear, as they say. Yeah, nicely nice. So now just need to get these two wires safely traversed. I tend to put them down this hole here. Maybe you can see it. It's there anyway. So then they can go down that hole and come out the back. This is a little bit tricky, this. I don't know why it's always so bloody tricky. Maybe it's the angle of the hole. There we go. It's one through. So just try and flatten the cables out onto the board in a reasonable manner so they just don't get trapped or caught or in the way of anything when you put the chipset heatsink back on. So that will, if you've got a glue gun, I don't have a glue gun because I'm a cowboy, but if you have a glue gun then you should probably glue these points up to a reasonable level. Obviously don't go mad with the glue gun. I'm not a master solderer, if there is such a thing, but I'm fairly confident that I don't need to have a glue gun for these, because this is a very simple mod. It's just two points. you can actually just switch out the chip itself, the R6 chip, but that's so tricky because the solder points are so tiny. So coming off this capacitor here is another way. I've heard that someone's only said in writing that there's been problems, I've read on the internet, but I've not seen it had any evidence. And I mean, I play my one all the time and I've had absolutely no issues with it, so I don't see physically and evidently I haven't had any problems with this. Okay. There we go. So now I can put the chipset heatsink back on. Let's zoom out a little bit. So this is the chipset heatsink. Now I haven't showed you how to pull this apart, but I will show you how to put it all back together again. Obviously you can see the size of the chips on this. When you pull this off, just move it like this until it feels loose, and then prise it up, because otherwise you could do some damage just pulling it up like a mentalist. So you've got 6 little screws. You don't need like the world's best screwdriver. I've got like a eBay Chinese screwdriver. So just do the business. Like this. Like this. Obviously if it's a magnetic screwdriver, really helps a lot, because these are quite... Gamecube's like really well built machine. It's a massive step up from the N64 in terms of design and build. The N64, obviously for its time it was amazing, but there's nothing to it. Same with the Super Famicom, really, nothing to it. These are a little bit more intricate. Obviously it gets more technical as time goes by, but just the quality of the build of these is sensational. Just what they packed into such a little small bundle was quite amazing, actually. And you can just tell just by opening it and how many screws there are. Not that that's a sign of quality, it's just that, you know, Nintendo tend to put a lot of effort into design, and I think that's why a lot of their stuff lasts. Okay, so you can sit this back on, or can you sit that back on? Fuck knows. Alright, so that heatsink's back on. To get your drive, CD drive, and lash it on. Lash it on and lash it up. So then change your screw head bit over to the fatter screw things. Screw away to your heart's content. I think there's 16 screws before you can take the CD-ROM off, CD-ROM drive, which is kind of crazy. But it just goes to show you how much went into this machine. Only for it to play those tiny little discs. Oh Christ, right, that's the wrong screw there. Anyway, there's loads of screws around the edges, but the two for the fan, you should put where the fan screw holes align. There's 3 screws that go under the fan, and then the fan needs to go on after those 3 screws go under the fan, and then the screw holes that align with the fan screw holes, don't screw the screws into those holes until the fan sits on top, then screw the screws into those screw holes. So there's 5 on this far side that you can't see over here. So that's the fan going back on. I really don't think it's that much of an issue taking it apart. Putting it back together is not so tricky, really. I mean, just my advice is just, you know, take photos with your phone. I just kind of went for it and took it all apart, and then made sure that I remembered how it went back together. I never had any issues at all. So that wasn't that. Ah, Christ! Now I've had an issue, haven't I? I've got to take the fan back out. There's a screw underneath the back of the fan. There we go. One more time. There's only 2 screws. Of course, to open the actual Gamecube, you need a 4.8mm Gamebit. 4.8. Where is it? Where the hell has it gone? Here it is. One of these Gamebits is 4.5. Sorry. 4.5mm Gamebit, and that will open your N64 and your Super Famicom or SNES and your Nintendo 64 and some other stuff, I'm sure, but I've never used it for opening anything else apart from those 3. Alright, 2 more screws. One at the front here, one more for the fan. So there's just these little screws go all the way around the edge. Not the front though, the front has long screws. Actually, I could just turn this around, couldn't I? There you go. That's the fan side. There's a screw there. There's a screw there. Underneath the fan there's 3 screws, 1, 2, 3. And they go in first before the fan goes back on, and the one under the rear, under the fan, needs to go in underneath the fan rear before you put the fan back in. Otherwise you're going to have small issues, or a small issue, a big issue. Big issue, buy a big issue. So next is these long screws. This is the pad contact things. The controller port contacts, so they face towards the controller port, so they make contact, and then the 2 screws per point. Let me just turn this around, one on each side. Change the end of my screwdriver around, these smaller heads. Now you can do the LED mod as well, but again, I said my bloody LEDs didn't turn up in the post, so I haven't been able to do it yet, which is a bit annoying, because I'm going to have to open it back up again when the LEDs decide to come, or if I have to buy new ones if they got lost in the post. Anyway, so that's all done for now. There's the two cables coming out the rear. So basically they need to go either side of the switch now. So the switch is mounted on this. The switch is fucking... Okay, so I'm just soldering the cables from the various points on the motherboard to this bloody switch. Touching this bloody soldering iron. I tell you what, I hate this crap. Come on, you son of a bitch. Lump it on there. That's done. Right, now for number 2. Come on. Right, put off lots of flux now. That's done. Okay, this is switch at the rear, both points done. Simple as pie now. Hopefully that should just slide back in. Cables, route them underneath both AV points, on the digital point and the standard point. Now, come on, you son of a gun. Come on, in you go. Right, what's going on here? That'll do. Done. Okay, so that's the switch. Bang, bang, up and down she goes. And off she goes. Round 2, here we go. Switches secured back on now. So let's close this bad boy up. Okay, there we go. All done. Now what I need to do is put the top lid back on. You bastard! Where'd you go? There we go. Top back on. Let's have a little look here. My shitty laptop keeps switching itself off. Okay. Apparently you've got to leave the lid off because it might break a switch inside or something. But I don't know. So Just need your Gamebit. Close the Gamecube. Got a Game Boy player as well to go on the bottom, but that's irrelevant right now. Just gonna so hey presto, that's done. So I'm gonna load it up and test it now, so be back in a sec. So here is the Gamecube running, and here is the screen. It's in Japanese. So what I'm gonna do is turn it off like this, switch the switch on the back, turn it back on. Now it should come back in anglais, English. So there you go, menu selection, mod done, whoopie doo. Hello. So today I'm going to follow up on the region mod that I did. So I've taken the screws out of the bottom, which are these screws, of course, that come out of each of the four corners, and obviously you need a 4.5mm Gamebit to take those out. Obviously, if you don't know what a Gamebit is, then you probably won't be able to do the mod, because you need to be quite adept at knowing what bits and pieces go where. If you know what a Gamebit is and you've taken apart cartridges and consoles before, then you'll find this mod very easy. And if you're a trier, if you're a doer, then you'll probably find it quite easy as well. I'll list everything in the description anyway. So obviously the videos before this showed me installing this switch, which is probably going to fall out now. Come on, you bastard. Move! Okay, it's really tight actually. Yeah, it's fallen out. Okay. That's okay if it's fallen out, because I need to glue it back in anyway. Alright, so basically at the front we need to lift the front panel forwards, and we're obviously replacing this LED here. So first things first, turn your soldering iron on. Mine's resting on a battery, which probably isn't very wise, because that could explode. And then just put some gentle pressure on the, pull the LED downwards, and then the cathode's on the left hand side, by the way. That is the cathode terminal, and the positive's on the right hand side. Right. Soldering iron's not quite hot enough, so as you saw in the previous video as well, I just did my black one. So I wanted to do a test run, so I didn't quite follow the guide that I was watching, but it kind of made sense in my head what to do. It wasn't illogical. I don't know why the guy brought the positive cathode through the positive hole when you could just wrap them over the top. Yeah, it made no sense to me. Anyway, regardless, let's desolder this. You can use a pump, or you can just use gentle persuasion. Both are okay. I've got a pump down there, but I cannot be bothered to pick it up. Just watch your fingers, because soldering irons burn. They're really hot. This happened last time as well. Comes out at a funny angle. Right, that side's completely clear of solder. Might have to just pick up my pump, which is probably the wisest idea I've ever had. Oh, there you go. First time more or less, and it's cleared all the solder. Right, there we go. Soldering iron's out. I don't have a soldering iron holder. I do have a soldering iron holder. I just can't find it. And I am flying by the seat of my pants anyway. Okay, so where's the LEDs? Obviously, I'm a very well organised individual. Where are the LEDs? Under here? No, they're not. Maybe they're under here. Oh, here they're up there. Okay, so these LEDs are blue-green, common cathode, which is in the middle, and then your anodes either side. So it's really straightforward. Like I said before, what you need to do... Oh, I'm getting some serious pains. What you need to do is bend the cathode the same angle as this. So it's about 6mm down, 6mm across in an L shape like that. That's what it looks like. So the cathode, just bend it like that. I mean, just, you can be pretty robust with these. They're not exactly fragile. Just don't be silly. Okay. So I don't go crazy with exact measurements, just I do it by eye. So that looks okay to me. So I've pulled the center, which is the common cathode, and I've pulled it about 6mm down, 6mm forwards. So I'll slide it. As you're looking at the Gamecube, there's two holes that you've desoldered the old LED from. So you want to put in the left hand hole, which is there. So just slide it through. Now what I do here as well is I bring both anodes right flat to as high as they can go, because they're going to come over the top of the little PCB there, the circuit board, because they are going to be soldered onto soon. So this will go through the hole, hopefully. Bend it down a little bit, bend these up a little bit. Too much, that looks ridiculous. Okay, get that through the hole. Now these, I like this method myself, because these anode legs kind of hold this into position now. So I can bend these over like that, and then just solder that cathode into place. Just use a reasonable amount of solder. Don't need to go mad. Right, there we go. It's done. So next, right. So we've got our double pole, double throw switch. Now, obviously, before we were switching the R6 switch closed to change the open and close to change from America to Japan, North America to Japan. Now we've got obviously double pole, double throw. There's a whole another row of switches, 3 terminals to solder onto. So we want to take a piece of wire from this middle terminal, central terminal, to the positive on the PCB. So the positive hole, which is at the moment doing not a lot, just want to get a bit of cable from there to the center terminal on the double pole double throw switch. So it's really easy. I've been routing my Kyvar cable, I forget what it's called, not Kevlar, but it's Kyvar or something like that. So really thin cable. I'll write everything down in the description anyway, so just I routed down there without all care in the world, actually. So if you want to, I strip the end probably about 6mm again, and I put a little curl in it to hold it onto the terminal, and then I stab my finger every single time as well. So obviously onto the central terminal there. So onto the central terminal I go. So that's hooked on more or less. Now just a wee bit of solder. Okay, that's done. Now, obviously, making sure it's to adequate length to go back where it was, which was around underneath the digital output that it has, picture output that is. Okay, now bring it around the front, route it around the front, and this needs to go, cut it to a reasonable length. Now, this needs to be stripped probably as short as possible, so these you don't bridge out anything, you know, connect it to anything else. So yeah, just stick it next to the hole. I'll put a bit of solder on the hole. So this is just a positive hole that was there before. It was the positive hole the old LED came out of. So I'm just basically taking the supply over to the switch and switching it into two different directions. One which will make the LED blue, and one which will make the LED green. Now basically all I need is 2 more pieces of cable. So I need 1 piece of cable from either end of the switch now, because that goes to the center. So when you switch one way, it will switch blue. When you switch it the other, it will switch green. So both cathodes, but both anodes, both of these ends basically on this LED, they both need to go to either end of the switch. So all you do is route some more of this cable, electronics cable. If I can find the end, I can usually find the end. There we go. So just route some of this down here, and yeah, so a little bit of 6mm, and then you can put a little hook in it to hold it onto these terminals. That's what I do anyway. If it looks like it's touching the other side of the rows, you can snip down in between. As long as it's soldered in adequately, you won't interrupt anything. Come on. So hook it round. Right, that's in position. Okay. Now, just put a bit of solder. A little bit of solder is what I like. That didn't go on. Oh, that should be alright. Or maybe not. No, that didn't go on at all. Actually got all the solder on the end of the iron. Right, that's too much. Ah, yeah, bugger. Right, I'll snip that instead of trying to desolder. I need to clean the soldering iron end. But I just put a bit too much solder on. That'll do. Okay, so now that one's done, all not touching, okay, I've got one more to do. So, oh my wire's fallen down, that's why I pulled that switch out of position. Okay, so this will go to this cathode. It can go to either cathode, but you need to be aware that if you want a specific color for a specific region, so if you want blue for the US and green for Japan, you need to put them on the correct side of the switch. So you might need to make a note of which side switches what. Now I couldn't tell you, and I'm not that bothered which region is which color, but if you are, test it before you... Alright, I'm doing this wrong. Test it before you put it back together again, and then desolder and switch them around. Just the anode, the positive legs from the LED, just switch them around on the switch, and then that's all you need to do, basically. Okay, one more of these. Let's get a little hook in this. Okay, root it. I'm rooting for you. Okay, now on this same side, stick that in there. Come on, you little rascal. You little rascal, you. Alright, let's move that out of the way. Now I've got some soldering iron on the end of this, so I'll just solder even. No, not going to work, is it? I'm trying to pikey it. Alright, let's see. There we go. Probably should. That's the way. Let some air in, ventilate the room. Okay. Make sure the switch can go around. Obviously, I need to super glue that switch back into position, but it's all right for this video. Just to show you how this is done. So I'm happy with that, so just going to cut it. So now you've got your 3 cables coming from one row of this switch. So one goes from the positive hole to the center of this double pole, double throw switch. Now the other 2 go from each anode, basically. So from each leg they'll go. So what I'll do now is I'll just pop this leg over here like that, pop this leg over here like that. You know, it doesn't have to be precise. As long as it's not touching any of these other terminals, it's fine. So I'll snip them a little bit shorter. You know, you don't have to be Mr. Panasonic, Mr. Electronics. Just do it reasonably neat. And you don't need to glue gun everything as well. People that glue gun everything are probably not very confident about their soldering, and your soldering doesn't have to be that. Just tug every connection that you do, just give it a tug, and if it stays in position, you know, it's unlikely, unless you have a catastrophe, that cable's going to come loose. It would be really unlikely that cable comes loose normally. It can happen on really tiny connections though, so yeah. But for average stuff like this, don't have to glue gun everything. So put a bit of solder on the legs, the anode legs, and bring the cable down. Okay, wait a second. Don't pull it too fast. Okay, that's soldered on. Okay, last one. Ah, my back, my chest. Okay, last one. Let's put some of this slack off, actually, there's too much on there. I'm just going to zoom in now, down here, because let's give you the best view possible. So I've got my 2 anodes with their cables going to the switch at the rear. Just put a bit of solder on. Okay, that's okay. Probably a bit too much on the PCB there. Come off. All right, there we go. Now let's just get this into position. Takes about 2 seconds to cool solder, so you have to hold the cables in position before letting go. Make sure that it's stuck fast. So that's good, that's good, that's good. And all these connections are they're hooked around and they're soldered into position, so I'm happy with that. So what you do now obviously is test it to make sure that it works. It's always a grand idea. A grand idea. So just plug this back in. These cables, they're very, very small, so they don't really get in the way. So let's just shift this down here. I'm just going to leave it open. Take my crazy taxi disc out. Okay, so I'm going to show you. No, I can't. So there's the Gamecube with the power plug plugged in, of course, and then I just turn it on. There we go. Green. But the disc is not spinning because this switch is not pressed down. And then you can see the laser reading the disc through the disc actually, which is, and green. Let's see what happens. Where's the picture? Oh crap! I haven't plugged the this cable in. Wrong channel. Okay, so it's on the Japanese. Let's just turn it off and on. So let's have a little look now. So obviously LED is green. And what region does it do? Because I've got a Japanese disc in it at the moment. I can't even see if you can see the TV. Should be able to now. Anyway, that's that. So that's Crazy Taxi. Let's have a little look down here again. Okay, so turn it off. That's obviously, whoops, should have turned it off before I did that. Switch the switch at the rear. And then turn it back on. And then we have a blue LED. The blue doesn't come up well on the phone actually. Comes up horribly. But now it's in English, so obviously it won't run the disc now. This is zoomed in big time. So it won't run the disc, obviously. But yeah, so English is blue, Japanese is green. If you wanted to swap the regions around, so you wanted it vice versa, you'd need to change the two end terminals around. So just swap the two, because they come from each positive, which will change the color of the light. Just swap them around, and you'll have yourself blue for Japan and green for America. But the thing is, you can get a few different combinations. I recommend these LEDs because they're really straightforward to use. And this method's really straightforward. Just yeah, couple of anodes, couple of cables. Cathode is soldered into the board, and then just take the positive away onto the middle of the switch. Then the two cables back to each anode. So really straightforward. And this is after, if you followed the region mod, then you would have had the switch ready and it would have all been prepared. So hopefully that's been helpful, and some of you, or at least one of you, is attempting to do this yourself. So thanks for watching, and good luck. Almost forgot to show the LEDs with the case on. As I said before, the blue not really showing up as blue on the phone, on the camera, so not much I can do about that. All I can say is that it's much bluer in person, obviously. So I'm going to turn it off and switch the region. Back, where are you, you little bastard? There you are. Okay, switch it up. I've obviously glued the switch back in. Don't know why I clicked the off button there. Wrong button. I'm supposed to press this button. So the green comes up. It's green on the phone, which is great, but it's much greener. It looks absolutely fantastic with the orange as well. The green and the orange, that is awesome. So yeah, cool. Really pleased with that mod. So yeah, take it easy. Bye bye.